Live from the BoD studios, it is Playin Slayin, episode 64. Although we are Bryceless tonight, as he is traveling for work, we're going to push on to deliver content to all 26 of our loyal listeners, but mainly Stu and Josh, who we're going to have on for a superfan episode in the near future. But Troy, what are we going to talk about on this episode tonight?
We are going to talk about Marvel Champions, the living card game from Fantasy Flight, Asmodee, whatever you want to call them, that we've been playing a lot of lately. Thanks to you.
Excellent. No. Thanks to Miniature Market, really. So we'll get through a little bit of a banter, and then we'll dive into kind of a game review and tell you all about Marvel Champions. But before we do that, when you're playing and slaying, it is important to stay hydrated. So, Josh, how about you start it off with what you are drinking tonight?
I'm drinking a Dragon's Delight, the Gen Con beer of this year. Troy brought over a 4-pack. Thank you very much, Troy. And it is delicious.
Least I could do. Thank our friends at Sun King, and I imported it back to Wisconsin.
So Troy, what did you pull out of the BoD fridge this evening?
So we are just drinking guest beers, is I guess what it is. It's so when you were over here, you brought your favorite, if I get it right, your favorite Oktoberfest, Third Space. It is the season, so really good stuff. So now, Ty, you have to drink some. We have not been over to your place, so I don't know that we were going to pull any. Something had to give you this. You gave it to yourself. There we go.
Yeah, nothing different here. It's the one time a year I can buy this, so I often this will be what I'm drinking during these late summer, early fall months before it goes out of rotation. So little Third Space Oktoberfest here as well.
See, like mines. Good job.
It is a tasty beverage. That brewmaster Kevin at Third Space, he knows what he's doing. Also, I went to the Brewer game Sunday, and I had a Summer Home, one of their Third Space beers. They have those at Miller Park. Refuse to call it whatever travesty of a name it is now, but pretty cool to see Third Space in the ballpark.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that. It's good. I'm actually going next week, I think, so I'll have to remember that.
Yeah, at any of the craft beer like beer bars, they have them. A few of theirs. All right. So we said we've been playing some Marvel Champions. We'll get into that a little bit later, but what else have we been playing? Looks like we got some stuff and things on the list here. Troy, any gaming getting played?
We got it's back at work, and we have a little work group that's interested in gaming. I think I talked about we had played D&D way back when, but my friend Matt, who brought over his Star Realms over, and we did that over lunch a couple times the days we're in there, and so it was really. It was a lot of people had never seen that game. To me, it was like, oh, this is the right. Sure. I sat down, and actually he brought, he had enough cards that we actually had two pairs playing against each other, and was able to teach somebody to play, and we played a couple of games, and I think I played Matt and I were able to whip through a couple, and I think we went 1-1, and then I'm probably just never going to play him again, so we can always say there's a tie. But we had a pretty good games for that. Ty, you can remember that. I think that was like the very first Gamehole Con or something. We might have pulled that out
and it was early
and played in the lobby, whatever. So I found like now I play the app. If I ever want to play it, I'll play the app version of it rather than the card game. So it's nice to kind of get the card game out, introduce some new people to it. It's a nice kind of pretty lightweight game that people can dig into it, but it's fun and it's short enough that you get through in 20 minutes and have a battle, and there's a lot of variability. I mean, you get with all the different ships and cards and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
There's something there. So it's especially a lunch game. You get 20 minutes, get a couple games in. Play with that. It was fun to get it because I actually sold off all my Star Realm stuff that I had because I hadn't played the physical version in quite a while. So it was great to kind of bring that back and have a work playing games at work again is a nice
Yeah.
nice thing. We haven't done that for a couple of years, so we're starting to get some momentum again.
Did Neil make an appearance?
Neil, I have seen Neil. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years, but he was not in that game, but I did see him at work the other day, and we did kind of catch up and talk about, yes, we have to kind of bring back the co-op crew or something else like that to get that going.
Nice. Josh, you didn't say it.
Neil from work.
I set it up on a tee for you. That's how long it's been since we mentioned Neil from work.
I kind of forgot him. My bad.
It's all right. If ever anyone wants to beat Josh at a game, just play memory with him, and it's an easy dub. What else? What else, Troy?
So was it last weekend? As I'm trying to figure out getting to the Chicago Open at beginning in a month or so, hopefully, I decided I should probably remember how to play 40K. And maybe how to play 40K narrative crusade version, because that's what I'm doing. So John came over and we watched. We had the Packer game on in the background, which was good enough because nobody really needed to watch that. And then we played a couple. We didn't get a full thing in. Most of it was just kind of learning. We did a little Death Watch versus Gene Stealer Cult, and kind of most of it was kind of like getting a crusade army out, understanding that how do you build an army and the tracking and things like that, and played one of the scenarios and had some fun with that. And then had a little adventure after that because we had a huge rainstorm here and I had a flooded basement, and so that might be the last game we have in the BoD for a little while. I'm still in here. The good news is the worst is over here. I have some wet carpet we have to figure out and that stuff. So we're in recovery mode for that, but it was fun to get some 40K in. At least for a small game of it. So, and we only played just like a 25 power level game,
Okay.
which was great. And then on a whatever the mid like 2 board table size, like 44 by whatever that ends up being, 44 by I don't think it's 60, whatever it is, 44 by 30 some or something like that. So,
Okay, cool. Who won?
John did, because the
He rolled more sixes.
No, Death Watch. I made both armies, and so I don't know. I guess I made his army a lot tougher than I did on mine. I have squishy Gene Stealer Cult people, and I gave him Terminators and Death Watch power armor guys who, yeah. So I think I shot him with like everything in the world, and he rolled like 1/1. I think I might have killed maybe one, maybe 2 Terminators, and that was it.
All right. Josh, how about you? Playing anything other than Marvel Champions?
Yes. The 4-year-old and I have been just crushing it after dinner. She always wants to play a game or two. Lately, we played Battleship. We played Connect 4. And your personal favorite, Ty, we busted out Monopoly Junior. So, yeah. All good games, and she's like really understanding like gamesmanship a little bit, and she's starting to kind of figure out a little bit of strategy. It's kind of fun to watch her get into games. So the older two like never really dove into games like she has. So she's my hope for the gamer of the family.
Next time you play Monopoly, just have her roll the 2d6 for movement twice, and then write down the score, drop the lowest, and give the thimble or whatever Monopoly piece some ability scores, and up your game.
She legit won too.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, she crushed me. She got like boardwalk and the greens. So she had all that whole row, and it was like anything I landed on was trouble. So
Good deal.
yeah.
Cool. Did you ever watch the I don't know if it's like, is it Dude Perfect? The guys on YouTube, they did a live scaled version of Battleship with real, like they laid in the little ships and then they threw like water balloons over, and that's how they. And if you get hit, so I thought that was interesting way to play Battleship, and might be.
That is funny. I
Nice.
crushed her in Battleship, so there's that.
Excellent. And then we played some D&D last Tuesday. You guys went into the crypt, or well, the it's been overrun. The undead infested temple of Zevnir, the god of death. Had some fights against skeletons and ghouls and a couple of wights, I
Yeah.
believe, was the last one. Then descended into the depths where you saw the shadowy wraith-like figure by the ritual kind of sacrifice chamber in a dark kind of crypt level. So we'll see what happens next time.
Not sure I like those undead people.
But how did you guys like that temple map?
Oh,
freaking cool.
yes.
Like, really cool.
We'll get more into that.
Yeah.
Last week took a week off of playing Vampire. Kind of reset. We'll be back at it tomorrow night on Mr. Meff's Twitch. We're coming up to what I think is going to be a relatively big fight. We're trying to take down an elder vampire. That might be even more to it, but always fun to mix it up and probably die when you're a immortal creature. Otherwise, I'm excited. I'm playing in another live stream role-playing game on Friday. I am doing the second edition of the One Ring. So that is Free League's Lord of the Rings RPG. Beautiful book. Ordered the hardcover. Been flipping through it. They had picked up that license whenever it fell off from who had it prior to them, and did the second edition, I think 10 years after the first edition had been released. So Charlotte, who does all of the editing for our podcast for Milwaukee by Night, is getting behind the game master screen, and is going to be running that game. And then Andrew, so Meph, will be in one of the player seats playing a hobbit. And Scott, who plays Ben Sahar in Milwaukee by Night, is playing he's been describing it as a nerdy elf with a bow. And I'm playing a dwarf. And then we have one new cast member joining us for the one shot. But we're doing that Friday on the Midnight Creations Twitch. Try to get that link out there. If you can't catch us live, because I don't think we'll have this up before then, maybe we will if Troy has free time. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll have it on YouTube as well and available to catch, but it should be fun. It's been described as a one-shot that may turn into a short campaign, but we'll see what happens. So the episode is In the Halls of Stone, so I'm pretty excited that my dwarf is going to get to slay some orcs with his axe.
Are you going to do a dwarf voice?
No, I can't. I can't do dwarf voice.
You totally could.
Yeah.
No
So,
voice.
So think of it as a pilot episode. This is the pilot episode. If it goes well, then you guys get picked up for a 6-episode series. If not, then it's a one shot.
Yeah. What is kind of cool is Charlotte and Andrew are really trying to create some content and get this going as kind of their vehicle for some actual plays. So should be interesting. There's some other ideas of stuff going on. But it's really cool to see. And I was asked if I wanted to play in this one, and I was like, yes, absolutely.
So it's not just an elaborate plan so that Charlotte can get back at Meph. It's not to turn the tables. No, this is all a big story just so that she can guess what? Guess who dies in the first 10 minutes of the episode? No spoilers, but
yeah, the Hobbit gets it. And that motivates the rest of the fellowship to go on to greatness after we see our young Hobbit friend slain by an orc arrow. But no, so that should be fun. I'm pretty excited. We're gonna get started a little bit earlier, 7 p.m. Eastern, so 6 o'clock Central, and probably run a little longer than our usual 2-hour episode for this one shot. So should be a lot of fun Friday night to play some One Ring. Pretty excited. It's a cool rule system. It really captures that flavor of, you know, the Lord of the Rings. You're telling a story, and there's the kind of the shadow, like darkness, that can creep in and affect your character in different ways. And it's a cool like D12 plus D6 pool. So you have like a single success die, and then you add a number of D6s to it, and you have a target number to hit. That's usually like, I think in the teens, like 15, 16. So, you roll your D12, add 2 if it's an average skill, 3 if you're really good at it, to the dice, and um, hit a target number. So hopefully that goes well for my dwarf. I don't want to die right away. I want to be. Scott and I have been saying we're going to do the Legolas Gimli kill count, so we're hoping for a lot of orcs so that we can play off that. How about some hobby? Who's doing stuff? Josh, looks like you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
I've been doing a little bit of stuff. So to get the Thanos and crew ready for our weekender a while back, I kind of just haphazardly did bases, and I knew I was going to go back and redo them at some point, and so I got that taken care of over the weekend. And I've been also trying to get a few more street tiles done. So I have one that is kind of like it's a flat open tile, but it's got like kind of a craggy middle, and I was gonna fill it with some like kind of ooze, maybe like, you know, radioactive ooze type thing. Because I was like, you could fill it with water and that'd be cool, and it would just look like water. But I'm like, this is Marvel. You gotta have some radioactive ooze, right? So I'm trying to make that look cool. I'm gonna actually pour that after the show.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah.
Can you 3D print a little turtle and put it by the ooze?
That's so good. All right. Yep. It's happening. Or I could maybe even, I have some milliput or some green stuff. Maybe I'll try to.
Make a little
Yeah.
turtle.
Yeah, this is gonna happen. All right. Turtle's happening. So maybe I won't pour tonight. I'll probably work on the turtle tonight.
Excellent.
That's a really good idea.
Full of ideas. I just need you guys to do the work and follow through.
Excellent. How about you, Tyson? Working on anything?
I had a chance on Thursday to go to a hobby night up at Games Universe, so one of the local kind of game stores. There's now a third one. I think it's about a year old since they opened up in Mequon, right off, what is that, Port Washington Road up there. And went in there Thursday night, hung out with Cubic Shenanigans, so Dan and Brendan. And then there is a battle report YouTube channel called the Dias Cast, which is a couple of Wisconsin guys that are up in that West Bend, Mequon kind of range. I don't know exactly where they are between there, but kind of north of the city. The Dias Cast is their channel. They do some really fun battle reports. I think Dan and Brendan have like guested on their stuff before, but Nick, one of the guys from the Dias Cast, and then Dave Nordstrom, who you guys know, but one of the local guys, hadn't seen Dave in a long time. He came up, and Mark Ramchek wandered through. He was checking out the tables for like an AOS league that he's doing up there. But so I went up there after work on Thursday, and I brought some of my. I have the warband. I think it's the Underworld's warband that was like the 3 Chaos Warriors and the Sorcerer. I can't think of the name of it, but I was doing some paint schemes for my AOS army. Playing with metallic paints and then some ink over it to get kind of that metal armor look, but color. So I found some blue tones that I like over different metallics, and I think that'll be kind of the base of what I go with for my Slaves to Darkness army. And then I made a mini stomp order, which I should get Thursday. I have a couple things for that new army. And then next week, Bryce is going to drop off some of his Slaves of Darkness stuff. So I'll be doing some building and painting here over the next few months as I head towards winter when they're slated to get a new book and start playing them. So I think that'll be the army I go with. So just messing around, figuring out what I want to do with it. Get my mini stomp order, and then it'll be like I never left. You go to one tournament and you're sucked right back in. And then I've been making a lot of dungeon maps. I think that counts as hobby.
Yeah.
Because it's really amazing. I put this down in the other segment, but I bought a program. I don't remember if I talked about it on the last episode. I might have touched on it, but Dungeon Alchemist is it's in early access on Steam. It had been a Kickstarter. Every month or so, every couple months, they're releasing new content. But right now, there's a ton of options, and it's an AI like map making program. But it has some really cool terrain tools. Has ability to add a ton of different objects and artifacts. Mess with the lighting, the different angles. You can do like a, kind of elevated, not quite first person, but 3-dimensional. Then like a raised, almost 3D, but more top down, and then just a straight top down view mode, light sources, everything. And it's super cool because there's a built-in API. If you're a pro member on Roll20, you can use the API on Roll20 to import maps. So you do an export in Dungeon Alchemist, you get a text file and an image, drop it in, copy paste, and it fits it to your Roll20 like grid, the lighting effects, the shadow, like it puts everything into your virtual tabletop. Just a phenomenal software. Before we started recording, I was just streaming. I was messing around, showing Josh how to make a lake full of bones, and
And
then I did like a
like
jungle temple in minutes. Like
it's like just doing the normal stuff is cool, right? Dropping in, temples and adding and removing rocks and trees and like all that. There's so much stuff you can add and remove and whatever. And then Ty like kind of tipped the camera angle and it was more, like kind of, like 45
Yep.
down and like that looked awesome too, like just everything looked great. And then he zoomed in and I'm like the detail is just amazing.
what
Uh,
did I put in that painting?
he put his own JPEG in a painting and it was Troy's character from like the icon. Like it's so good. It's so good. And then Ty had to go and blow my mind. He's like, okay, so this is all great. And I'm like, this is all awesome. And then he turns it to morning. And then you have the shadows coming from one way and it looks like morning. Then he turns it to nighttime and turns it to evening. And it's just bonkers how much detail and how much awesomeness is in that program. If you're into creating maps for D&D, especially if you're into Roll20 and you have the Pro edition, I
It
I don't know how you don't have this because it's amazing.
it has integrations with like 6 or 7 virtual tabletops to do exports like that. It was $45 on Steam, so it wasn't like a $5 thing, but like they're they're constantly working on it. There's a great community Discord where people put up and share their files, and like then you could take a template for somebody. If somebody made this awesome like you know dock in a town, you could take it and then adjust it and do your own stuff and have the file because people put them up in the community creations forum. It's just
And, and
it's an incredible find.
and we're not getting paid for this. This is just an
No.
awesome find. Like we're just that jazzed about it. So
Yeah, Charlotte told me about it. I was like, I wish there was something that made maps easy, like AI assisted. I was just venting in our Milwaukee by Night like player schemes channel, and she's like this, and she put a link to it, and I went and checked out. I'm like, this looks pretty cool. I watched the video and I bought it, and then the next day I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. It's incredible. It's an absolute game changer for like making maps for a virtual tabletop. Um, they haven't really said what direction they're going to go. They may do their own virtual tabletop at some point. They've talked about possibly doing first person view in the future. So like you could literally like go into the map and explore it in first person potentially. Like um it's really something else. It does take like check your system requirements because like when it runs it'll slow up my computer because there's a lot processing when you're changing stuff on the fly, and the graphics are really crisp and detailed, like the water effects. The water looks real, torch flame, everything looks real, and it's animated on screen as you're building. So like there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and I'm happy my computer runs it real smooth. But
Yeah, as I was trying, I'm looking on their site now. I'm curious, like how if he's using, are they using an Unreal Engine? My guess is they're using a game engine underneath to do the 3D render.
Yeah.
And just what are they doing? So yeah, that's why you need a basically a gaming computer type power probably to actually run the stuff. But that it's just amazing what this thing can do.
They're releasing a desert, Fate Morgana, at the end of this month, which adds like desert. Today on the community forum, they put up like somebody made like a desert canyon. It looks like the Grand Canyon. It's crazy. So it's like, like palace baths, like the idea of that desert kind of imperial palace effect. And so they'll add in all those different room types and artifacts and objects, some more texture brushes, different stuff like. And their roadmap is laid out from the Kickstarter. So they had all of their like Kickstarter stretch goals that they're releasing, and then they've put a few like longer term roadmap items. I think the company's out of Europe, I think. But
yeah, if you've played any games like where you're building terrain, or if you're like Valheim or things like that, it's very similar, and it looks amazing. So yeah, if you're into that sort of thing, check it out. Dungeon Alchemist.
Yep, on Steam. Early access. Go check it out. All right, I'll stop ranting and raving about making dungeon maps and on the computer, but man, is it fun. Like it has reinvigorated me, which is probably why I'm taking the Candlekeep campaign I was doing with Matt and Elena, Tom, and our friend John, and I'm launching a reboot as a second campaign set in the same world. So same timeline, not same place as the one I'm running for you guys, but same world, same timeline, just a different spot, so their launching off point is a shipwreck. They were all on a ship that had been setting out from Haven. So some are prisoners, possibly. Some are possibly guards or other travelers. It's like a prison ship that wrecked against the sundered cliffs. So they're going to start at the moment of coming on shore after the shipwreck.
Nice.
But on the west, because you guys are headed east, this is kind of happening around the same time in the west.
Crossover episode?
That's somebody's like, are you crazy enough to try a crossover? I'm like, oh man, that would be amazing. That'd be wild. I don't know, what would Tom do though? He'd have to be a split personality.
He can do it. He's a talented young fella.
So getting that going here in about a week and a half. So the maps, I'm just making a ton of maps and then giving myself, access where I can just drop in something that I think would fit. So I'm probably running out of storage space on my computer. I think I've made about 20 different battle maps and dungeons and castles and stuff. So, all right, now this mini-sode became a long-sode because I talked about Dungeon Alchemist for 20 minutes.
No, it's right. Good stuff. Good stuff. It's really good stuff.
Troy, are you doing any hobby?
The good news is for the episode length is that I don't have a lot of hobby for me. My hobby was trying to build my Crusade army that I'm trying to bring to GW, and then cleaning my basement has become my hobby. Like they said, we had a crazy rainstorm, whatever, so that derailed me a little bit. And I'm a little bit worried. Like, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out, am I going to have everything ready to actually go to Chicago? I still am not 100% committed there, especially with the recent developments though, but we'll try. And I did pull out some Genius of the Cult stuff that I need. I have a ton, but there's always a few models that I need to kind of to fill out a couple units I want and to clean things up, and I'll probably add 1 or 2 new models that I've had sitting on the shelf that
if you
came
need
out.
if you need any models you don't have on the shelf, you could always put an order into landmine at ministomp.com. Also not
Yeah,
sponsored.
I'm sure I will, but that might be Crusade because I still have, or not. Sorry, Heresy.
AOS.
Yeah,
Oh.
no, Heresy. AOS. I'm living in my Sylvaneth, and so
Have you got the new bugs?
I
new
do
flying
have a
bugs?
couple bugs of,
All right.
Thanks to Herrick Hobby and Games, not sponsored either, but I think
If you tell Ministomp that Ty from Playin Slayin sent you, you'll get no discount.
here's a code that will not work for anything at either one of
He
those
might
places.
send you a sticker or something.
In your email to him though, just put hashtag just the taste, just a small taste, in the bottom of your email. Oh, good stuff. How about crowdfunding, Troy? You doing any crowdfunding?
I saw the same thing you did. I'm excited that the Shotguns and Sorcery is coming out from our friend Matt Forbeck. And so
yes, he today tweeted out that a FedEx truck dropped off 2 pallets of books into his garage, and him and Marty have a lot of signing to do because one of the backer levels was a signed copy of the deluxe edition or the base edition, but so this will be shipping out soon. I got the shipping charge hit my card today for the that as well. So
yeah, I know that's what always like. I have the same thing. I have notifications on my, and all of a sudden, and I'm like, what's this weird like random 8? Because like I just didn't shop for something. What was this weird charge from a company that I wasn't sure of? And then I'm always like checking your email, and you're like, oh, that's what. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to flip through it. I don't have like guns and gunpowder per se. I've kind of hinted at there's like barrowstone powder, I call it, and Tom's character is the artificer with like the ballista or the cannon. So I've given him an opening there. So I'm thinking maybe I'll bring in some aspects of that to the campaign on a limited basis, but I'm hoping there's stuff I can just grab and pull into a more like low fantasy, not that like steampunk.
Yeah, I enjoy. I'm going to be interested in. I think the setting is so unique, like that set in, and so it'll be interesting to see how he's turned that into the game terms, and I'm sure fleshed out even more of the world and the different. Or whatever, different races and classes in that thing and areas as they go up the mountain and the politics of that city and everything else like that. So it should be pretty cool.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm excited for that one. Otherwise, throw open the door to the library before we get into Marvel Champions. Josh, what have you been listening to, reading, watching?
Yeah, I just finished up Poppy Wars, and I am like just started the Dragon Republic by R.F. Wang.
Excellent.
Very good. I like them immensely so far. But I've heard this book is actually better than the first one. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm excited.
Cool. We'll check back in with you when you make some progress through it.
Sweet.
Troy, how about you, sir?
I am, and I was starting, or I'm more than halfway through I pulled this off the shelf, was the Shadowrun book, Never Deal with a Dragon, one of the originals, Robert Sherritt. I think this is like from the 80s, probably late 80s. This might have came out early 90s. I don't know if I was trying to see if I have a published date on it, but I don't know. I picked it up a while ago and it was just sitting in my electronic shelf for quite a while. And I was looking for something a little bit different. And I'm like, oh, this will be good. and I got into it. It's pretty good, and it holds up, because I always worry with a book in kind of the 80s, like is that sorry, I'm out of focus for people that can see me, so trying to get there. And it's held up, and the story's pretty good, but I stopped because Echoes of Eternity from Aaron Dembski Bowden, the 7th novel in the Heresy line, is out, and I dropped it and jumped into that because I wanted some of that. Siege of Terror. It's getting to the end. I'm only a couple hours in, but I'm like, I don't know how Aaron.
Has Sanguinius had his fight yet?
No.
Okay.
They're kind of setting things up right now. He's just like literally I don't know. I'm probably 3 hours in, and no spoilers, but he's just painting a picture. He's just really painting a picture of how effed up Terra is at this point. How at utter loss of hope. Like it's pretty, like he's just painting this very depressing, bleak kind of picture, showing some signs from some of our heresy friends flashing over, brought in some of his characters that you've seen over time. Maybe some Arkham land might be in there a little bit. But overall, it's just more of scene of just painting pictures of the devastation and everything of Terra. So I think he's kind of setting us up for some. I'll be interested to see what some interesting stuff in the end. But also, I think maybe just setting the scene for the final the final book in some ways. So and again, like always, kind of enjoying it, and I will report back as I get through. And I'm happy. I'm gonna be interested to get back to the Shadowrun book too. I don't know about you guys. I never have actually played like the Shadowrun RPG. I was interested in it. I was always interested in it, but at that time there was actually Dark Conspiracy kind of came out, which was similar but not quite the same. Kind of this idea of kind of magic coming back into a modern world, which is funny, is like a lot of the dates of like Dark Conspiracy and Shadowrun are actually now or past. Yeah. They were looking out, in the 80s, 20, 30 years.
It's that Blade Runner, right?
Yep.
Like Blade Runner was 2020. And,
yeah. And so it's pretty interesting in that. But and there was I read a couple, there was another way back in the day, Shadowrun fiction book, To Excess, that I had kind of enjoyed and just saw. I thought it was kind of world and there. So and I think it holds up. I'm enjoying the story. Like even the sometimes the technology but I think it's all pretty good. I think what's funny is a lot of these older ones, the technology miss, right, was, I think people didn't think wireless was going to be as big as it is, right? I think it's funny how you see, like, there's still the idea of jacking in the things and, right, whatever, you're still capable. And I think people just didn't think about, that the how extensive, like, everything's become wireless, right? That even in high, back then, the high technology all still had a lot of cables, right? So.
Very cool. Before the thought escapes me, I did want to mention, and Troy, maybe you can line up a guest spot. So Dan from Cubic Shenanigans and Doug from 2+ Tough, he did a lot of AOS lore videos on YouTube. They've started doing a podcast that's also available on YouTube called The Emperor Protects, where they're going back to the beginning of the heresy books, and they're doing like hour-long kind of book reviews. Dan and Doug are talking about the heresy. So they started with the, not the first one, I think, in the order written, but maybe the first heretic or one of those books they kind of start with, and they're doing heresy reviews. So
interesting. Yeah, bringing back the. Oh, it's good. Yeah, bringing back the I can't think who is the guy. Dave Wycheck, or is it? Am I got that right?
Dave Wycheck, yeah.
Yeah, and him, and I can't remember the guy who was in England. They started way back in the day. They had started a podcast.
Greg Dan, maybe.
Yeah, Greg Dan. Yep. And it was super popular. It just ended up being more of I think those guys, the amount of time, and again, they did such a good job. I think they just ran out of time in their lives to dedicate to doing in-depth and reading all the books and then going through that. But so it's cool that the other people are picking up the torch, because I think there's some definite desire for it. So as my webpage tells me every day too.
Yeah.
So
I brought that up, and Dan's like, yeah, definitely. And Brendan's like, that's how I'm reading the heresy books, is Troy's reading guide. So,
that's awesome.
and I said, me too. That's how I started down that path, was Troy's guide. So maybe you'll just have to ping Dan and see. I put up in our Discord, so maybe we can add it into the show notes. But the Emperor Protects, each episode's about an hour too, so they're not running on for like 3 hours of talking heresy. But fun little thing if you're into that. Speaking of heresy, I'm reading some Dan Abnett. So I went from Double Eagle, which was current 40K, to Xenos. So I'm listening to the Toby Longworth narrated Eisenhorn book 1, and you meet Beckwin, and I'm like, oh crap, that's where it happened. And hearing Beddingcourt and how cool he is, and all these characters that I've completely forgotten pretty much every single thing that's happening in the book. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like they're at the Glaw estate and like, fighting the Carnodons in the arena. I'm like, I don't remember this at all, as I'm listening enthralled in my car. Worried I don't have a new Audible credit yet for another like 10 days so I can get the second one. But digging that. And then I'm reading Babel. So making progress. Talked about that last time. That's R.F. Kuang, Rebecca Kuang. Her novel, that's this alternate history, Oxford. It's super, is intellectual, the word. Like there's so much focus on the origin of words and translation, and this concept of how language has evolved that forms the backbone of the book. But they're weaving a really cool story that deals a lot with the British Empire and colonialism and like the effects of it, and why Babel is doing this silver working to further the empire, and how it's subjugating nations where they go, and they're not helping. It's all for profit. It's this very like hypercritical of the British imperialism and expansion of empire, based on because of their ability to translate and use translation to power this silver smithing, the silver engraving that creates like magical effects to make steamships run better, to make roads last longer. Like, all this concept of engraving matched pairs of words on a silver bar and then embedding that silver bar, and that's how the magic of it is spread. So it's finding like the word for light in one language and illumination in another to like create a light effect, like, and how as English became the dominant language in places, some of these languages die and they're losing the ability to find these translations. So they're going out and bringing kids from like China and India to Oxford and educating them so that they can have these other languages and these access to this translation. So they're even using the people from those places. Super cool book. Okay. I'm like 80% done with it. But it's not a chore to read, but like it's a thinking book. Okay, like as I'm reading it, I'm taking a lot of time to like digest what I'm reading and going back and like seeing, but the pace is picking up, and I'm probably going to charge through it one of these next night or two. I've got about 100 pages left. So, and then I went back to Critical Role Campaign 3, started watching a few of the episodes. I was on like episode 7 or 8. I'm on the 10th episode now. Kind of listening / watching when I'm making maps or doing other stuff. Really enjoying that. I want to catch up though. I'm trying to avoid Twitter Critical Role spoilers and stuff.
Then don't. You're not going to be able to this week. You're not going to be able to this week because
I know
stuff happened this week.
Something big happens, but I don't know who it was or what happened. And I'm assuming one of the characters likely died, but I don't know who. So I'm not following any of the. I've muted Critical Role on my Twitter feed.
All I'll say, it's so big. I'm worried. You're gonna get spoiled. Because it's everywhere, and even it was enough for me. But they did their job, because it's probably gonna get me to jump in, and even if I just watched that episode,
Yeah.
if they just wanted to create publicity, they did a good job of it. So, but it sounds like it was a very like Matt Mercer genius, uh, creation kind of thing. That it's supposed to be a really good stuff. So no spoilers, but you'll be interesting when I
It's
talk to you
something
next
huge.
week if you've been able to, because
Avoid it.
I
Yeah.
couldn't even avoid it because it was not. I'm not even there, and just in the general realm, there was enough chatter about it.
So that's kind of I know it's been a short time since we last talked, so maybe some overlap with Babel and Abnet Xenos, but really liking getting back into an old book and then reading a new book.
That's exactly where I am too. And then the only thing is I did, but like Disney Plus just keeps pumping the stuff out that I'm still behind. Like I'm enjoying a lot of them.
Trailer?
Oh, the Willow trailer it's kind of like the Dungeons and Dragons movie trailer. I've just watched the Willow trailer like 10 times to just be like, I'm so excited. I'm happy. Just like they don't even need to make a movie at this point. I'm just gonna watch that trailer over and over again.
Good.
Oh, and like just the anticipation it creates will keep me fueled for quite a while. So
I'm also loving Rings of Power. I watched episode 3 the day it released. I watched it again the day after. Like, I'm not going to get into the hate that it's receiving from, people saying that it goes against the canon and it does this and that. Like, it's not canon. It's a adaptation. It's somebody's vision of Middle Earth, in the Second Age and what happened. So screw your timeline, screw your like, let's be honest, let's call a spade, racism of saying like, why are there elves of color? Like because it's a lived-in world and it's created by somebody and it's fantasy.
Yeah,
it can have
it's
whatever.
not real.
Yeah,
it can be
it's
anything.
not real.
Yeah.
It's not based on your views of what white fantasy is. Like that's not what it's about. And like, I don't know. I could talk for hours about how mad I am at the people review bombing it and like just spewing like BS, but it's been a lot of the last 6 years around here. So, loving Rings of Power though, highly recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that's a vocal minority, which happens a lot, right?
Yeah, very.
Because it sounds like overall, but it sounds like overall, there's many more people who are enjoying that show, and it definitely is on my to watch list. I'm excited to get there, but I'm behind on that stuff. But yeah, because I've been working my way through Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk. I'm loving She-Hulk. I'm there every Thursday, just enjoying that. That's fun. And then I caught up on Thor: Love and Thunder as that hit Disney Plus last week, and again, I know that one might be a little bit mixed. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Laughed, cried. It was Thor. It was, and I can't say the director's name ever, but he did it again. It was pretty good.
I have a huge Disney Plus like backlog that I need to watch.
And Mandalorian 3rd season trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah, even more excitement.
Whatever Bryce says about The Mandalorian and not liking it is false, and that's why he's not here today.
Right.
Contract dispute about Mandalorian reviews. So in the spirit of moving things along, we should probably talk about what we teased at the beginning as the main segment, even though it won't be super long, but a review of Marvel Champions, living card game, Fantasy Flight Games. And, classic style. They've done this for a number of other IPs, Arkham Horror. I think they did Star Wars, Game of Thrones. They've made a lot of these. But it is a cooperative card game, collectible in nature. But when you buy your packs, you know what you're getting in them. So it's not like a trading card game. It's actually a collectible card game. The core set includes 3 villains and scenarios, and then 4 heroes. So 2 pre-built decks and then 2 or 3 other heroes that you can customize decks from. I think it's 5, might even be 6 in that starting box that are available to play. But from there, they've expanded it to include a number of other characters. You can buy character decks for about $15. They have scenario packs where you get like the Green Goblin, I think, is in one, where it's like his encounters and villain card and stuff. And then larger kind of, they're like $40, maybe less expansions where you get a number of villains. Like one is Guardians of the Galaxy theme, so you fight Ronan the Accused and the Collector and somebody else, and then you get Rocket, Raccoon, and Groot in there. So those boxes are available too. So it's nice. It's been out for a couple of years, but that's kind of the broad overview. You're working together to stop the villain's scheme, and each playing your own hero. I think that's the important thing is you each are your own superhero. And there's a deck construction element. There's a lot to it, but opening thoughts, Josh or Troy, before we kind of break down into like a review of how it played and theme. Anything you guys want to touch on?
I'm enjoying it. I wasn't sure what to expect because it's like it and again it because I hadn't followed it. I just kind of seen it in the store and it's like, oh, yet another living card game. But playing it again, we've played it multiple times. I don't know if it again. I didn't play a lot of the other living card games, so I can't really say if this is that much different. But I'm enjoying the mechanics, enjoying the choices, and it seems to have some really good balance around it. Internet so. And its theme, right? And it really captures that theme with the superhero, and you really feel like you're playing it, and the cards all make sense, and they're thematic and so forth. So it's that combination of I think some really good gameplay with the really strong theme, really woven all the way through everything that I think makes it pretty enjoyable.
And to kind of tap off that theme, having those box sets, where it's like Thanos or it's Guardians of the Galaxy or it's whatever Red Skull. Those theme boxes are really kind of cool because you get heroes and you get a whole bunch of villains as well, and all their event cards and all that stuff. So I think they're doing a really good job making this really fun and having a lot of options so it doesn't get boring, right? So
What else I think is really cool about how they have packaged it up is each hero feels. So I've played as Venom and Iron Man, and both felt incredibly different. Although both relied on a lot of gadgets, and like Venom has all these extra weapons, and Iron Man has his suit that affects his hand size and hit points, and like so as you're playing your suits of the Mark V, like armor prototype or whatever, your character, the way he plays is changing. Um, and each hero has elements that I think feel very thematic to that hero. Like, um, Josh, you've played as Spider-Man, and you have like your web shooters and abilities to like lock up an enemy and flip away from combat and not take damage. Like each character deck just feels like that superhero, and I think theme captured with mechanics is not something that's usually done well. Usually you have mechanics that could be great, could be average, and then a theme that's pasted over it. This feels like the way the card play works for each hero is kind of what you would expect that hero to do, but they thematically you know have constructed mechanics around it.
agreed.
And the villains too. Like we're fighting Ultron and all these faceless drone minions are coming out, and like he's just throwing like all sorts of these constructs at us, and we're trying to battle them before we can get to Ultron. And it reminded me of the combat in the Avengers movie, where there's all these robots and alien things flying around and they're trying to do that. Well, Ultron is just kind of the middle, wreaking havoc, and they're just trying to get through it to get to Ultron. Like that's how it felt.
Yep.
So I guess, do we want to talk mechanics a little bit about the gameplay and how like cooperation through turns works.
Yeah, I think that's a good talk, and because I think one of the interesting things that you can hit on there, Ty, is the fact that you have, beside that, we didn't talk, the heroes have their alter ego. Like there is two sides to
Yep.
each hero card, and you have to kind of balance those two sides around it. Which again, I think an interesting mechanic, but also super themey, right? I think that's gonna be as we talk through this. I think a lot of these things are gonna reinforce that concept.
Yeah. So kind of mechanically, when you're setting up the game, each player has their hero and the alter ego on the flip side of the card. You start in your alter ego form, and then you build the villain deck. And the villain deck has 20 cards that are themed to that villain. Then there's a scheme that is like kind of what the villain is trying to ultimately do and creates complications for the players. So you build through combining some of the villain decks and these encounter decks that are kind of like side stories into your 40 card villain deck. Then you have your player decks, which are between 40 and 50 cards, depending how you've constructed them. All the pre-builts are 40. Within that player deck, you have your hero alter ego card. Then you have a number of other card types. There are upgrades that you play onto your character that will help. There are allies, like Nick Fury or Black Widow, other. I think, what did we see? Some cool ones like Hawkeye,
I think
Valkyrie.
even Iron Man is out there as one.
So like
Yep.
the concept of you're playing these allies out in front of you that can then interact with the bad guy and kind of support. They can block for you and take a hit, and accomplish things. And then you also have events, so like that are single use, kind of you play them for their effect. But it's not like Magic where you put your land out for mana. The hand you have fuels the cards you play. So each card has a resource type and a cost. And if you want to play a 2-cost card, you have to discard 2 symbols worth of resources. So cards can be played for their effect or for their resource value. And when you discard them, they can power up other cards you bring out into play. So each player gets a turn playing through their hand of cards, using their alter ego to either recover hit points, or you can flip your character card once per round. And on your hero side, you then get the ability to interact with the villain. So you have an attack value, a thwart value, which is how you remove threat from the schemes that are building up, or your attack, which does damage to the villain, and then a defense value for when you're attacked, how you mitigate damage. But you take your turn, each player goes, and then you get to kind of ready. So as you exhaust cards, you ready yourself for the villain turn. Then the villain applies threat to the scheme. You're trying to manage that and not let that get too high. There's a cap where that either escalates to the next scheme or you lose ultimately when you get through the scheme deck. And then the villain in turn order will attack each player, or if they're in their alter ego form, will scheme and then add additional threat. So it's always coming at you trying to do damage or trying to increase the threat on the schemes. And you as the player, when you're taking your turns, are trying to mitigate those two things, reduce and eliminate threat, or drop the bad guy to 0. So after the villain attacks or schemes, there's then an encounter card that is drawn for each, hopefully only one. Sometimes things will increase the number of encounter cards drawn. Those encounter cards will affect the game in some way. They'll add minions to battle against you and engage directly with your hero that will then in future turns attack you or add to the villain scheme. Or it might force you to play your nemesis. So each hero has a nemesis card and then a side deck that gets shuffled into the encounter deck. So like you might be going along and all of a sudden your nemesis comes out, you're adding cards into the deck, and then you're trying to deal with that scheme before you can do anything else. So there's a lot going on. I know this sounds kind of harebrained without an actual outline or rules in front of me. That's kind of what I recollect as an overview of the mechanics. But then you're drawing back up your hand and repeating that. First player moves, so it's different players starting each turn. And you can also ask for help. So it's open information. If I need Spider-Man to try to lock up the bad guy, so I can do something else. You can talk and request actions from other players. Um, even to the point of like interrupting your turn, so they could play an event card that interrupts or do something to engage with the enemy at that point in time. And you play until your heroes are all at 0 hit points, or the villain is defeated twice, because there's a level 1 villain and there's a level 2 or 3 villain card. So when you beat the villain the first time, you pull out the more powerful villain, and you use the third one if it's like an expert level, harder game, higher hit points, better stats, different effects that can make it harder for you. Or if the threat reaches a certain value on the scheme, you can also lose that way. Once you get all this threat applied through the villain scheming and encounter cards and other things, you can also lose that way.
It was hilarious the other night. We thought we were toast. Like Ty and I, like basically he was about to scoop his cards, and Troy was like, "No, let's just play one more round." And somehow we finagled it, and like it's not just like, it's not a pushover game. There's a lot of uh, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things you have to mitigate. So, um, yeah, I mean, if you're not thinking, maybe a turn or two ahead, um, it's really pretty tough. So I don't think we've won a lot of games. I think all of them, but they weren't like easy wins. I don't
Yep.
think. Maybe the first one, but um, even still, like I felt like there were points where we could have totally lost if we didn't play, exactly right. So I don't know. Especially this last one against
Yeah.
Ultron. Like
Yeah.
there was a
Expert.
point where I was like, yeah, not gonna happen.
I think that's a sign of a really strong cooperative game. You hit this tipping point where you're working and you're like, oh man, everything's stacked against us. And you get to this point where you're dreading the next villain phase, because you
Yeah.
think that's the one where he drops a hero or where he puts threat on and elevates the scheme. So like, I think that a cooperative game needs that element of like, you are facing a uphill battle to be fun for me, at least, because
Yeah.
I generally don't like cooperative gaming. Like, that's not my favorite style of game. I'd rather play head to head. I want a winner, I want a loser. Like, that's just my inherent gamer like type. um but this one, it feels challenging enough that you need the team. Like,
Yeah.
um and the villain scales per player, so everything is like per player. So supposedly you can play this game solo. Haven't tried it yet. No idea how it plays as a solo game, so I can't really speak to that. But the cooperative factor, I think with more players you can play up to 5 maybe. I think it's a 1 to 5. It might be a 1 to 4 player game. I don't recall exactly. Um, but it does get harder with each player that you add, um, given the hit points and the amount of threat required, and that threat starts at a certain level on different schemes, so it elevates in difficulty. But each of our games, we hit this point where it was like, oh, this is getting dicey. Like, it could go either way, and it felt like we were pressed. It wasn't ever easy. Even the very first intro scenario, like, it felt there was a moment where we were getting beat up by Rhino, and had to figure out, okay, what do we do here to just pile on some hurt to this guy? And then we had a couple of huge damage turns that put us on top. But it's a well-tuned game. Like, I can tell, and granted, huge game company, of course they're going to play test their game, but like, this felt like it was play tested very well. Like, it's kind of like what people say about Troy's Space Hulk game. Like, you get to this point and it builds to this crescendo, and you can tell that it's been played through and it's been tuned, and like, it's dialed in to fit that. It's going to take about this many turns, it's going to take about this many hands. You're going to feel like you're losing, and then you might succeed, or you might, your hero might take a damage spike, um, because it is random in that you're boosting the villain's abilities. You draw a card and there's a boost value on it that can add between 0 and 3 to either the amount of threat they're adding or the amount of damage they're dealing. And then you're forced into that choice of, do you defend with your hero to try to reduce the amount of damage coming in? Do you throw an ally in front to bite the bullet? Or do you take those direct hit points of damage when you're attacked? So you're also making these choices at various times. It never feels like, in some card games, deck builders, you take your turn and then you just wait. This feels like there's that player engagement and that strategy and cooperation throughout the round, where you're interacting. You're never just sitting there and waiting for a long time. It's very inclusive of all of the players.
Yeah, I think when you look at a cooperative game, I think those are the kind of things you're looking at, like around engagement. And yeah, it's interesting. Until you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, like we each have our turn, but it doesn't feel like that. It's like you're always engaged, even if it's not your turn. Even if you're not playing anything, you just want to understand the board state. You want to understand, like, can I help? Should I be helping? What do I need to worry about? Right, and around that. And then the other one is also there. People always say with a cooperative game, do you have an alpha gamer problem, right? Is somebody just directing everyone at the table? And again, never felt like that, because you're playing your hero, and you have to really have, you're going to make those decisions, what cards you have and all that stuff like that. So, I mean, you're definitely talking about, hey, I think we need to take threat down this turn. Can you deal damage because I can't, or can somebody, right? Around that, but it's never somebody's telling, you need to play this card or that, I don't think is not able to do that. So I think that's, again, two real strong aspects to the game that sometimes other cooperative games might fall down on.
Yeah. It's a very good point.
And even when you get kind of a bad draw, right? Maybe you don't have the optimal cards in that hand. There's always something to do, right? You're always doing something. And I've only played the like the starter sets, right? And I know you can kind of customize your decks and whatever, but like I always felt like I'm doing something to help out, right? We're moving it forward. So again, with the play testing and tuning and that sort of thing, like they're making sure that the cards are worth something, right? You're not totally out of it if you don't get a good draw.
So I think that's one thing that we haven't really delved into much, is the deck construction, right? But like, you have your hero and the 15 cards associated to that hero. Then there are 4 different kind of categories: aggressive, justice, leadership, and I can't think of the fourth. It might be like protection or something like that.
Yeah, protection. Yeah.
But you build your deck with your hero cards, and then one of those 4 card types and associated cards, and then you can use just those up to 40, or there's some basic kind of that can go into all different decks, cards to draw from, and the base set has enough to make 4 hero decks ultimately. And then when you buy a separate hero deck, you get more into your card pool. So you get the 40 cards that make up their pre-constructed deck, and then you get like 12 to 15 extra cards to bring in. So ultimately, like, that's the rub of the living card game, right? Is like, you want to buy the new sets so you get the cards to add into your pool to build your decks. And that's how they get you. But you know what you're getting with each card set. So like, you can tune your deck, and when you choose that, like, so I did leadership with Iron Man, and that let me have the ability to play my own allies and power them up through like improving their abilities, or I could play an ally, pay the cost from another player's discard pile. So like, if you guys had an ally that with leadership can bring in, so you get this feeling of, yeah, I'm Iron Man. Like, he's one of the leaders of the event, kind of the shot caller, figuring out the strategist, that plan. Or like playing Hulk, you're using aggressive cards, limited hand size, but there's all these aggressive type cards that you can put in to deal damage and do like offensive stuff. And Spider-Man has control and like the ability, ways that he can build a deck by adding these things to fit a battlefield role, for the lack of a term. Like, I'm a damage dealer, I'm a controller, I'm a leader. You get that feel from the deck you build. And you can build decks towards that purpose. You can be really good at reducing threat. You can tune your deck to be a thwart based deck and reduce the threat on schemes, or to be a heavy hitter and go after the villain and do damage. Like, you can customize and add these different cards to get those effects and get that, um, what type you want to do. Or do you want to be an all around kind of support, able to do a little bit of everything? um, so I think that's a cool element that I'm interested in kind of digging into too, the more we play it, and kind of figuring out what works, what doesn't. So I think we talked about the expansion, all the boxes. The core set is still out there. I think, Josh, you just bought the core set, so you have the ability to kind of have those access to those cards to kind of add in and build your own hero decks. Um, with the cards, you can have 3 cards in your deck of any individual card, like from those basic or those 4 kind of types, unless it's a unique, and there's a unique symbol. It's like a plus sign by the name. You can only have 1 of those in your deck, and only 1 of those cards can be out. So if Josh and I both put Nick Fury in our deck, and I have Nick Fury out in front of me, Josh couldn't play Nick Fury until mine is discarded or off the table. There can only be 1 unique card out of a certain type. And then some cards are limited, like 1 per deck, it'll say on the card, even if it's not unique. Ones that generate more symbols for resources. So that's out there too. I'm waiting to see what hero decks Troy buys. I know, Josh, you bought a handful of new heroes too.
I did, yeah. After our last game, I was like, I'm all in. I want to build some decks. So,
Yeah, I have not. I've been, as we've been doing, I have the web page up. I was looking through. I was amazed at all the. Again, I get what's cool is, to us, well, at least to me, a new game, but it's 3 years old, 2 years old. So you have you don't have to wait for all the expansions. That it's like all this stuff is already out. Now you can just, like, good and bad, because now it's just like, oh, I'm just gonna buy everything together. But there's a lot. I don't even know what it is. It's got to be 20, 30 heroes that are out. There's at least 6 different waves they've done of the heroes out there. So
It's a really cool range too, right? You got everything from like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver to Spider Ham. Like,
yeah.
some of the Guardians,
Yep.
most of the Avengers, Spider-Man. They have like Miles Morales and Ghost Spider come in one of the expansions, so you can even play as the other Spider-Man. Yeah, I don't know. It's solid. We didn't do this as a play it or slay it, obviously, just more as a review, because I think it's unanimous in play it. We're all kind of bought in and excited to play more. One thing I did want to talk a little bit about, though, with it is, several months ago we played Marvel United, which is
Simon.
you're Simon, you're with it added the little minis that are useless other than the mark where you're going, but you're playing cards in a cooperative manner, trying to defeat schemes and a villain. Obviously, I would say lighter than Marvel Champions, but there were similarities. I'm not exactly sure of like which came first or if they dropped at the same time, but it was a very clear, like, the Marvel IP must have been available, and like the games have very different but similar kind of how they're played and how they work. Like Marvel United, play your cards in the circle, so you're like forming that story, right? Like, I play a card, you play a card, and you kind of chain off the card played previously. So different. Marvel Champions is that more traditional, build a deck and play your deck against the enemy. But any similarities there? Is that something you guys kind of thought of as we were playing Marvel Champions?
Yeah, it was the again, it's not you have to, you kind of if you've done both, right, you're going to immediately kind of flash back and like do a comparison and that. And it was interesting. And that's what I think as we did this review, some of those things were, why do I like Marvel Champions better, right? Around around that, what was, because Marvel United was good, and I think we played a couple of times. It was good, but I wasn't kind of like, oh, I'm going to grab it. No, some of that is also the chibi aesthetic never does anything for me, so that unfortunately that gives it a minus. So even if the gameplay is good, like that wasn't, and it would have had to really excel for me to kind of overlook the chibi aspect of it. But like you said, the miniatures are also they're just placeholders. They're not like in there, but for me, some of that, but I think it was like we talked about. I mean, we had some back and forth, but it felt like that game, again, we didn't play quite as many. We played 2 or 3 times on that, but it felt like we kind of had got it. Like there wasn't as much of a challenge. Like we kind of understood, okay, here's how you can play this. If as long as we do these things, we'll probably be okay around that. And they're just not, there's not that level of complexity. There's another level of complexity they've added with Champions that's been engaging. Plus it feels like there's a little more, they figured out how to turn the threat level up, pun kind of intended around that there's a couple of different things to worry about. You're always worried about 2 different things, and it just United didn't feel like it had as much of that. Like we weren't sweating bullets as much, and and not to say again, maybe there's more stuff there's a lot of stuff that they created for United too, so maybe you could add more things in there and that to try and up the intensity level or something there, but it didn't feel like it for us, at least. So.
And I thought both did a good job of kind of telling a story, right? Marvel United, I think we talked about it, like they're like part of the game mechanic is you're following that story arc, right? All the way around the board. I felt like this Champions had a similar feel. Like you don't have that same arc thing, right? But you have your surveillance team out there and they're helping you out, getting rid of threat every round. So, things like that, if we play it up a little bit, it's sort of fun. So
yeah, so all in all, Marvel Champions, it's the core set's out there and available. I think Noble Knight is still running there up to 25% off sale. Get it shipped to you in under 7 days. Do not order it from Miniature Market. Also not sponsored by Noble Knight, but
or Miniature Market.
well, certainly not anymore. If ever we had been. Listen to episode 63 and you'll find out why Ty will never be allowed to sponsor anything. But you can find it out there. To get in and play the game is $40. Like,
right.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
not 40, a huge
50.
price
point.
Yeah,
and we talked like there's a bunch of stuff out there for it, but I think you could get the base set, buy a couple heroes, maybe a couple other heroes that you like, and there's a lot of gameplay there. There's a lot. I mean, you're going to be tempted to add more stuff, whatever, but I mean, there's so many different scenarios and variability and things like that. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars around that. You could really go in at $40 or $50 and you're going to get probably months and months of continuous play out of it. And again, if it's something that only comes off your shelf every once in a while, that may be all you need. Take your favorite heroes and do it, and that's your investment. Now, what we're saying is that you're going to like it so much you're going to keep wanting to buy all the rest of those things out there. But you could have a real lot of fun with this without a whole lot of investment.
So I think that gets us to the show end. Made it through. Somehow we found our way here. We'll touch on some of the upcoming events. We mentioned a few of them, but I'll zip through them. Troy might be at the GW Open in Chicago the weekend of October 7th through the 9th. I will not be. That is my wife's birthday. It is, I think, her second time hitting 30. So I better figure out what I'm doing for her, because that's going to be more important than getting an army ready for the GW Open that I'm not attending. But Troy hopefully will be there playing in the narrative 40K Crusade event. Josh, any plans on swinging through Chicago for the Open that weekend?
Maybe we'll throw a maybe.
It's just
Um,
right down the road. You just drive south a little bit and you'll be right there.
Boom.
I did see Mark Ramchek at Games Universe. He is running the AOS at Dragonfall. So that is October 22nd through the 23rd, along with Gamehole Con in Madison, where some of us will be, and then Holy Havoc, where Bryce is going to play with Domus, Steve Herner's event down in the greater Chicagoland area, which is incredible narrative AOS. So that is kind of next up is
And
the tournaments and conventions in October.
Dragonfall is in Lake Geneva.
Yes,
Yep.
it moved. It used to be in Rockford. Now it's
No,
in Lake Geneva.
what did you? Yeah, somewhere. It used to be Northern Illinois. Yeah, and now it's
Oh, that's right. RockCon is in
right. And then
Rockford, which had been often the same weekend.
will give the people at RockCon is back. It is the first weekend in November because they looked at the calendars and realized that maybe that
There's a
last
lot,
weekend in
yeah.
October seems to be kind of heavy. So that is like I think November, the weekend of the 5th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 6th, around there. So
We'll probably have another episode here right around the time either Troy's getting back from or going to the GW Open, and then one likely will focus on Gamehole. But I think we got some plans for the next couple episodes. Should be pretty fun. So in the meantime, check us out, leave us a review, give us a thumbs up, like our posts, like and subscribe on YouTube. Join the growing number of subscribers to our YouTube channel, and you too could one day be a super fan guest on the show. Yeah, emails, Twitters, you know where we're at. If you don't, come find us. I don't need to plug everything. But thanks for joining us this evening. Hopefully you get a chance to be a superhero and play some Marvel Champions. And in the meantime, keep the dice rolling, drinks on ice, and no matter what, keep playing and slaying.